morning. You're listening to Insurance Matchmaking, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance. And now, sharing his knowledge, here's your host, Matt Libby.
All right, and welcome back to Insurance Matchmaking. I have a guest again this week, another one of my fellow BNI members, and actually, I'm probably going to get to know him about the same time as you do. He's only been a member here for a couple of weeks, and he needed to be on the show. I have Kent Moore, attorney here in Cookeville. And Kent, you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Well, good morning, Matt. Thank you for the opportunity to come on the radio show here. It's not something that I get invited to do ever. I think this might be my first time. So I'm an attorney here in Cookeville. I mainly practice in Putnam County. I started off in Chattanooga in 1995, so I've been doing it a little while. I moved up here in 2010, so I've been at Cookeville.
10 years before I did.
Yeah, in Cookeville and Putnam County for about 13 years now. I do a mix of real estate and business and some estate planning and probate work, a lot of transactional work, say, for contractors and developers and people who want to buy and sell businesses, landlords. Yes, I hate to admit that I help evict tenants from time to time. You know, you got to do the dirty work.
Yeah.
But that's just a little bit about myself. Really, my practice. I'm married. I married my high school sweetheart, Rhonda. We got 3 kids, 4 grandkids, and 1 on the way.
Wow. How many kids was it again?
3.
3. Okay, so we're about the same mode there. One of the things that you have talked about in BNI recently, one of the reasons I definitely wanted to have you on the show is a lot of the stuff we overlap on. Some of the care. My seat in BNI is I'm a life insurance agent, but my sweet spot is Medicare, and so I deal a lot with those Medicare clients. And they start asking me about when should I take my Social Security, and that's why I had Jared on. That's why I want financial planner assets, but those estate trusts and wills and advanced directives, and that was one of the things you mentioned recently. We're coming up on the end of the year, and you mentioned about how most people, they've probably hit they've made their deductible or they've hit their max out of pocket.
That's right.
Go ahead and expand on that.
Yeah, well, if you've met your deductibles and then you need a procedure or set of procedures done, and of course it's going to be less out of pocket, less that you have to contribute towards your deductible, whatever your plan may say, it's always a good time for those folks to schedule those procedures.
Right.
And important along with that is making sure your powers of attorney and healthcare powers of attorney are up to date before you head into those procedures, just to make sure that if, on the offhand chance, something happens, you've got somebody that's there here in Putnam County that can help take care of you in the event that maybe they have to put you under for a while and keep you sedated or whatever. A number of things can go wrong during procedures. And I just mentioned it. It really doesn't do much good, particularly for the healthcare power of attorney, to have somebody who's in a city 2 hours away.
Right.
You really want boots on the ground here in Putnam County.
Right.
And for healthcare power of attorney, it's as long as it's somebody that you trust, that's of prime importance.
Right.
But for the healthcare side of it, if you can have a nurse or somebody in the medical profession that is your power of attorney, they're a little bit better at being your advocate.
Right.
And know what you need, can really advocate for your care and the proper type of care that you should be getting.
Right. And you mentioned that power of attorney, and I realized I had a client in this past week, working on his and his wife's insurance. One of the things I run into is those who probably, again, I talk about life insurance, and you don't wait until you're old and around like me. You maybe waited a little too late. But I run into that situation too, of that loved one is already in some stage of dementia.
Yes.
What do you recommend for someone like that they're either fighting it because they're not admitting that their memory's going, or it's already gone so far they can't make the decision to grant that power of attorney? What steps can we take at that point?
Well, a couple of preliminary things. If you believe that a loved one may be getting into that area, dementia, Alzheimer's. I think Parkinson's is another one that can attack your mental faculties. If it's very early on, I would recommend, particularly if they've not updated their paperwork, powers of attorney, whatever that might be, it's not too late at that point. What I recommend is get a physician letter. Many physicians will sign some sort of letter saying, I've looked at this person, evaluated them, I believe them to be legally capable, right now at least, of taking care of their own affairs. Despite what might be, a beginning onset of some sort of mentally debilitating disease. That doesn't last very long.
Right.
We're really kind of in a gray zone here, and the lawyer will need to evaluate that individual as well. Certainly that physician letter needs to go in the file. When you're drafting the power of attorney and appointing an agent, of course, the person that's diagnosed or may be diagnosed is going to have to sign that document. They are required to be of sufficient mental capacity to sign that document. So just having a lot of the medical opinion and the legal evaluation that they're competent is important.
Okay.
If they've gone too far and they don't recognize loved ones, they don't know where their stuff is, they don't know where they want it to go, obviously, and they have a hard time, it's probably too late at that point to get them to sign a document and have it stick.
Right.
And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. We may have to, if certain places, hospitals, nursing homes, don't recognize just the fact that, you're really the only loved one that's been taking care of them. They're not going to honor that, which they don't have to.
Right.
You might have to get a conservatorship.
Okay.
For the person, which is a legal process where the court appoints somebody to take care of the person, their health care, and their property.
Now, a question on that. So even if it's a spouse, if they are not mentally capable to grant the power of attorney, do they have to go through the conservatorship process, or is there kind of an out that makes it simplify for a spouse to take over on that?
It is not incumbent upon a particular facility to accept the spouse. So it depends.
Well, kind of my question more there is of that person having actually the legal document that they have power of attorney, or maybe, like I said, need to have conservatorship. Because what I run into in my sphere, I need someone to be able to sign the applications.
Yes.
And they have to have, and they could tell me they have power of attorney. It's actually not incumbent on me to make sure they have it. I mean, I should, that's good due diligence.
Right.
But because sometimes I'll run into, I have power of attorney, but I don't have it on me. Do you have to have a copy? And I was like, no, actually, no, I don't have to have a copy. But if the insurance company ever asks you for it, you do have to be able to prove that you have the power of attorney.
That'll be important, yeah. And what we do, of course, I send the original powers of attorney with the client, along with several copies. I keep a hard copy in my file, and I also scan in. So we have a digital copy.
Yeah.
And tell my clients when they leave, if somebody ever needs a copy of this, just call my office. And we'll, as long as it's you, then you give me permission to release that otherwise confidential document.
Right.
I'll have it to the email of whoever is asking for it right then.
Yeah.
So there's no question.
Yeah, and I've saved some for people that are like, they bring it in and like, I can make a copy of that in case you can't find yours. I'll have it in your folder. I don't have a problem with that situation where they're at my office and they didn't bring it with them. Then or if I'm working with them over the phone, they don't have to send me a copy of it, because the insurance company doesn't make me prove they have it. That the individual has to prove it. If it ever is requested, it's the insurance company that will request it. So, but yeah, it just kind of gets a little sticky, especially with Medicare compliance. It's really tight. I've got to be, as I think,
that's right.
Cross my I's and dot my T's.
And I also advise clients, look, there may come a time when somebody who is not familiar with your situation, doesn't know you, for whatever reason, they get the sense that you're trying to pull one over on them. They may want to see the original, just to make sure that copy you're showing them is, in fact, a true and current copy. So make sure you hang on to those originals, put them in a nice, safe place.
Right.
I don't advise putting them in a safety deposit box. Mm-hmm. Keep them at home in a fireproof, waterproof, bomb-proof, whatever.
Well, that's like
proof
we
safe.
had Beth Ruck with the Conquering Clutter. That's kind of one of the things she hit too. There's certain things that you think put it in the safety deposit box for safety, but when it's really needed, is you're not available to go to the safety deposit box. It needs to be where someone can get to easily. So that's a great point.
That's correct, and of course, tell whoever it is that's appointed as your power of attorney where those documents are and how to get in. Don't lose the combination of that safe.
Right. It's usually 1, 2, 3, 4 or something like that.
Right. Password. That'll be the password.
Yeah.
For this.
But you want to make sure it stays locked, even if if you're not worried about someone breaking in, you make it a simple password you can remember. Some people will stick it on it, but if there is a fire or something you want to make sure it's securely sealed so that you don't lose the documents that are inside. So I always talk about my sweet spot's Medicare, and you've talked about wills and trusts. What's your sweet spot in the legal realm?
I just do a ton of real estate work.
Okay.
Started off early on. Interestingly, my very first practice covered a lot of intellectual property, patents, trademarks.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that to me.
And that lasted a little while until I found so many other things that were just vastly more interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of boring drafting patent applications.
Gotcha.
And so one of the very first projects I did was an interesting real estate project helping out. I was at a large firm a firm that will remain
nameless.
Yeah.
We know how that goes.
We did a real estate project, and I just thought, well, this is fascinating. So I did not really get into real estate consuming more of my practice until about maybe 7-8 years into practicing law, and then it's been a lot of real estate.
Right. All righty.
And that's when you do real estate, you're helping businesses.
Mm-hmm.
You're helping individuals. Your real estate can find its way into probate and all sorts of landlord, tenant, developers, contractors. So you get into real estate, and that becomes sort of the hub. Mm-hmm. And you get work from all those spokes of contractors, landlords, developers, whoever, probate, estate planning, you name it. There's just a whole host of things that are offshoots of that you really need to know as a lawyer to have a nice, well-rounded practice.
Right. So you mentioned you were working at a firm when you determined that, and I realize we're coming up on our break.
We got a break? Okay.
Believe it or not, that's how quick this goes. Wow. We're already there. So we'll go on the break, and then we'll touch base on kind of how you got started, sort of thing.
Well, we'll see you on the other side of the break then.
This is Marvin Long, your Twin Lakes Business Solutions consultant. Every day on November 11th, Twin Lakes celebrates our veterans, the ones in active duty, in reserves, or retired, and the ones who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Twin Lakes will forever be grateful for the home of the free because of the brave. In honor of all our veterans, Twin Lakes business offices will be closed on Friday, November 10th. Take time to thank a veteran, not just today, but every day.
And now, back to Insurance Matchmaking, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance, hosted by Matt Libby.
So anyway, before we went on the break, when I was talking to Ken, he talked about he got interested in real estate law when he was working at firms. So basically, out of law school, you went, generally people go to work for somebody else because they don't usually start their own practice. So how long were you working in a law firm before you were branched out on your own?
I went to a law firm, a big law firm, for 4 years, and then there was a group of lawyers who had left that law firm, and I think it was about a group of 12 or 13 lawyers. So I went with them for a little while.
Yeah.
And I think that lasted about 2 years, and then as law firms, particularly in larger cities, they just can't help themselves. They got into a fight and they broke up.
Yeah.
And so I went with...
It's like the Beatles.
Yeah. I went with a group of 3 or 4 of those. It varied from time to time. And then finally I just said, y'all can't play well with others. And that's when I decided to go out on my own.
Okay.
Of course, when you're in just naturally, when you're in a larger law firm, you are responsible and have duties and obligations to the other individuals who are owners there. And that really limits your practice in a way.
No, I get that. It's kind of like, I went independent here just a little over a year ago. It was one of those, like, when I started with the company I was with, will remain nameless today, I thought I was an independent agent, and I was actually what they call an LOA, which is a license-only agent, which is not a terrible thing, and I wish I just would have understood it a little better when I started, is I knew I assigned all my commissions to the company, and then they paid me their share, and I knew they were taking a cut from that, but some of that was, but they provided a lot of software and technical and training. There's a lot, they provided a bunch, but it limited me of what companies I could work with. It was a brokerage firm, so we worked as brokers. I just wasn't independent.
Right.
And so I went independent March of last year, and have really I've been enjoying it, and now I'm starting to grow my agency, so that's been kind of fun. I wanted to touch on one of the things you talked about, some of the working with landlords. I always run into the crowdfunding things. I call it "Go F Me."
Yeah.
So it's like get the life insurance when you're young. And you talked about some of those, like with landlord disputes. Does renter's insurance help anything on that, or is that mainly just going to be for goods in case of a fire or something?
I'm seeing a lot of leases now where the landlords basically are insisting that tenants get contents insurance.
Okay.
I don't know to the extent that they can actually force them to.
Yeah.
But it's a great idea to get contents insurance if you're a renter, in case something happens to the building. There was a big fire on some of the apartments over on, I guess it was
up there in Willow near the campus.
Yeah. And this thing started on one end due to no fault of the landlord or anybody else. Maybe it's a grease fire, and depending on the firewalls and all that they build in, it can spread quickly. And you want insurance there to cover your belongings, so at least if you get evicted and there's a lot of smoke damage, not only can you find a new place, you can get your contents replaced too.
Right.
It's a great stress reliever, in a bad situation.
The landlord covers the building, not your stuff.
That's right. They'll only cover the shell, and if it burns down, or could be water damage, could be any number of things where you actually have to be displaced. You don't get to stay there.
Yeah.
You've got to find another place while the landlord rebuilds. So even if the landlord gets the shell replaced, you're out for at least 6 months.
Right.
You got to find
some place to live. Right. So you mentioned when we were on the break, you mentioned TennCare, and it also prompted me to think, do you do anything helping people with disability claims?
I don't.
You don't do
that? That is a fairly specialized area.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't know really the first thing about it other than to send them to a disability lawyer.
Okay. But so let's flip back to where you mentioned about TennCare. How do you get involved there?
Well, there's planning for TennCare. If you have...
Are you talking about like in the estate planning?
Estate planning.
Okay.
Yeah. There's the look back rule. The
right.
Famous,
yes.
It's 5 years right now.
Yep.
I've heard people say that they thought it was 7 years. I can't find that.
I've never heard that.
And so for your audience, the 5-year rule means
that
if you transfer an asset to a loved one, basically give it to them, then if you've done that 5 years before or more before you apply for TennCare benefits, you do not have to count that asset when you fill out your TennCare application.
Right.
So that 5-year rule is important. Now, that doesn't cover a sale for fair market value.
Right.
That's not the type of transfer we're talking about. TennCare won't care if you've got cash in the bank instead of a piece of real estate.
So
right?
if the real estate trend, but again, if you sold the property more than 5 years ago, it won't come into play. But whatever proceeds, like you said, you still have in the bank are going to count.
That's right.
And that's mostly for and we talk about that's for the nursing home care.
Exactly. If you're going into a nursing home, they require you to fill out an application. You have to disclose to them all of your assets and anything you've gifted to people within the past 5 years. And that's TennCare fraud if you lie on that application.
Right.
So
on that vein, one of the things I know is an issue of, they talk about somebody, they get the TennCare and then when they pass away, the state comes to take their house because they didn't transfer it. What kind of steps can you take for someone who's maybe in a nursing, maybe they're already in the nursing home, maybe they're not getting, or they're getting TennCare because the only asset is their home. What kind of steps can you take there to transfer that to family members so that if they're, because generally they're not, most people don't live in a nursing home more than 5 years. I think that's why they do the 5-year look back, because the ones that will, I need to transfer my property to the kids so that they can still have the house when I pass away. Have you run into some situations that way?
Not me personally. I don't know if you've already applied and you're already in a nursing home, you've already told them about the house. I'm not aware of anything. There may be that, I do sort of a narrow lane of estate planning. You get into a lot of the more wealthy situations, and I have to refer that out. That's just not, I don't, because you're talking about then a lot of tax
So you
laws.
focus on that a little bit more for those that are going to, that probably will qualify for that spin down, not the ones that they're
That's right.
Yeah.
But, some of the exceptions to when TennCare can come in and take the home, as you say.
Yeah.
Let's just say there's a spouse still living there.
Right.
They may have a lien against the property, but they won't do anything. They won't take any action on that lien as long as the spouse is living there.
Right.
There are some, if you have a disabled child still living at the house, they have to wait until all those exceptions basically have been exhausted. The disabled child no longer lives there, or the spouse, the surviving spouse, has passed away, and essentially you've got a vacant piece of property. Then TennCare can exercise its lien rights, and at that point we're in a probate case, and TennCare, let's just say you were only in there for 6 months. The TennCare lien may not consume all of the proceeds from the liquidation of that house then.
Okay.
And there's also another rule that has just passed the legislature, that TennCare previously, before this rule passed, this new law, they could just hang out there and be a lien holder forever. And that got a little wearisome on people. It's like, we don't want to be TennCare's collection agents. So the legislature required them to take action within 4 years of the date of death. And if they haven't,
then they release a lien.
then there is no lien. It's gone. You don't even have to get a TennCare release in the probate case.
That's something that would come up in a title search then.
Yeah. Well, I've actually talked to some of the folks up at TennCare, and they say, well, if it's been more than 4 years, just send me the information, and I'll send you a release anyway. And you can have
that's
it in
good.
the file. If some courts,
Wow, somebody in the government actually doing
exactly,
something helpful.
Yeah. So if you have a case, maybe that's 3.5 years that you're waiting to probate, somebody's died 3.5 years ago, the attorney may tell you, well, just wait 6 more months.
I want to cover something before we do
Sure.
run out of time, because I don't want to leave. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
That's a good question, because I am word of mouth and referral only. I've got just a tiny little sign. I'm not on social media.
Yeah.
They can call my office, 526-6131, and I'm in an office located at 24 North Jefferson Avenue. It's really just right off the square. If you know where Poets and the Market is, I'm just a little bit down there, down the ways next to the family dentistry.
Okay.
I think it's Hometown Family Dentistry. I think that's
Sounds
the name
right.
of it. They're right next
Yeah.
door. And that's the only way that you can get in touch with me, unless somebody just passes my information to me.
Right. And you mentioned word of mouth and referral. What's kind of your accepting a client process? Do you give a complimentary consultation before you start billing, or do you want people to kind of come in and do a retainer? What's your process?
It just depends. There are I mentioned earlier how I was sort of had obligations and duties to other people in a bigger practice.
Those billing hours.
Yeah, it's up to me. And anybody who's coming in for what I call hard legal advice, I got a problem, I need your advice now, they're on the clock.
Yeah.
If it's a case that I'm looking at, hey, can you take this case? Can you look at this situation and see if you can help me out? There's, I'm not going to always turn the clock on right when a client walks through the door. And then there's the cases that somebody just genuinely needs help, and legal aid, for whatever reason, cannot step in and help them. They don't have the funds or resources. I'll take a hard look at that case and see if it's something I can do pro bono.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the pro bono. The legal aid, do they only just have like certain staff attorneys there, or are there local lawyers that will do pro bono consulting with them?
If you qualify for legal aid, and I think there's 2 areas of qualification, you've got a limit on how much you can make, and then there's subject matters that they just won't take. I don't think they'll get in the middle of custody disputes,
right,
for example. But otherwise, if you qualify, there's really good lawyers there at legal aid who can help you out. If a lot of, say you run into a real estate issue or something like that, where they just don't, that's not something that they do, then if you're really somebody who is in need of some legal expertise, then that's something that I take a hard look at in terms of doing some pro bono work.
Okay, great. Well, believe it or not, we're getting close to the end here. So
Is it already done?
Yeah.
That was fast.
So just kind of want to give that reminder out. You can always find the show at insurancematchmaking.com. And also, if you go to that link, you can listen to the past shows. My past shows now are on YouTube. So we'll put the plug in. Hey, go there, click on one. You can click on one of the past shows. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, because that helps me get noticed, and I can start getting more people hearing my show. I work all over in Tennessee. I can also help people in Kentucky and some other states. So it doesn't have to just be the local Cookeville area people that I can help, but you're going to hear it live on the radio if you're in Cookeville. You can listen online when the show airs every Saturday at 10. But to listen to past shows, you'll need to go to my website. And that's where I always remind, there is a question box on there. You can submit questions for the show, or if something that Kent said, hey, I need to ask Kent about this, or how do I get a hold of Kent again? You can put that in there. We'll make sure you get connected. So until next week, have a great week, and we'll see you back on Insurance Matchmaking.
You've been listening to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance.